Welcome to the Southern Ohio Synod's podcast. I am Pastor Rebecca Great, and I serve as the media ambassador and storyteller for the Southern Ohio Synod, which means I coordinate communication via our social media profiles, coordinate our weekly and monthly newsletters, and help with keeping our website up to date. I am so glad you have joined us for our episode today.
This is Pastor Tim Mentzer, Assistant to the Bishop for Discipleship, Leadership, and Engagement for the Southern Ohio Synod. And I'm joined by Elizabeth Gilbert for this podcast. Elizabeth, take a second to introduce yourself to us.
Yes, thank you for having me. My name is Elizabeth. I live in Cincinnati, downtown and over the Rhine, and I'm involved in a couple of different ways. I've been also with young adults locally and in the ELCA. I created and co-lead Gather Cincinnati, which is a young adult ministry for anybody that identifies as a young adult in the Cincinnati area to have community with other people of faith in the same stage of life as them. And I also served as the co-chair for the Gather Network, which is a ministry of the ELCA young adults, and helped to create it so that young adults in other cities can help build their own gathers, which was really wonderful. So those are a couple of the things that I've been involved in recently and that I love to do. And that's me.
Awesome. So you mentioned the Over the Rhine area in Cincinnati. What is so unique about that area?
Yeah, it's definitely a really cool area. I landed here out of college. I went to Ohio State and studied data analytics. That's what I do during the day. And I live in kind of the middle of Over the Rhine, and it's a historic district. It's preserved, but there's also been a lot of change in the area, a lot of gentrification, and the demographics in the area have looked radically different over the last 100 years, for sure, in a lot of different ways. And yeah, so I both live here and go to church here. I go to First Lutheran in Over the Rhine, just on Washington Park, which is lovely. There's a lovely community there that I joined when I landed here. And I also interact with the community by walking and cycling around as my main mode of transportation, or taking public transit like the bus. Yeah, it's a really cool area.
There is, in the shops and the places to eat.
Oh, yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
And so you mentioned First Lutheran. Tell us a little bit about that congregation. That's an exciting ministry there, too.
First Lutheran is First English Lutheran. They made it because there was a lot of German speakers in OTR many, many years ago. And now it's a congregation that is, I would say, small to medium sized, but there's someone from every demographic, every stage of life. There's wonderful kids that I get to be a part of their lives and hang out with them and their families. And there's lovely older folks as well, and people who are in a kind of similar stage of life as me or a little bit farther, and I get to learn from and be in community with a great community, a great group of folks. And First Lutheran is currently really connected to arts organizations. They're able to provide a really vibrant space for people to have performances and rehearsals and a connection space for community organizing and things like that. So it's been quite a journey to be a part of them from 2020 to now, but I love getting to do life with these folks.
Wonderful. And am I remembering right that just across the park is the Cincinnati Symphony Hall? So it's right in the heart of the arts there in Cincinnati.
Yes, music hall, and it can be tough to get rehearsal space for a reasonable cost. So spaces like churches help arts organizations a lot. So it's cool to be able to be a part of that and get to benefit and hear some awesome work, at performances.
And do you like the intergenerational feel of the congregation?
I love it. Yes, I grew up in a really program-heavy suburban church in Chicago, and so with it being such a large church, I had the opportunity to get to know folks that were my parents' friends, or my favorite sweet older lady whose name was also Elizabeth, and that's why we became friends, or volunteering with kids and things like that. So that was kind of my experience growing up. And then I was really blessed to be a part of campus ministry when I was at Ohio State and Jacob's Porch, and it was a really formational place for me to be in. But when we were at the Porch, we visited church partners of the Porch who supported us and brought meals so that we could find intergenerational community and get to connect in a more traditional church environment once in a while. And so now it's kind of back to the other side of the spectrum, right, where it's always intergenerational on a Sunday morning because that's what my church is like. And when I joined it, it was I was young adult and the intern is young adult, and that was it. But that kind of prompted Gather Cincinnati because it also can be a little bit lonely to only be around folks who are experiencing really different stages of life, and getting to have community of people who are thinking about and going through similar things as you, kind of processing and navigating the world in similar ways at the moment, is really nice. And it's really good to be able to have both of those things through Gather Cincinnati, community thing adults, and through First Lutheran community with intergenerational folks too.
And I want to talk about Gather Cincinnati in a second, but I'm curious about why Lutheran?
Yes.
What is the gift that the Lutheran expression of the faith offers?
I would summarize it by saying that I really like the Lutheran focus on grace. I think that grace and love are how we're called to be in a relationship with our neighbors, and it's a really important lens to use to view the complex reality of the world. I think that acknowledging and naming complex realities is so critical, so important, and that without the context of grace and love, of God's grace and love for us and for our neighbors, that we can show that you're missing. It'd be missing a big piece without that. So that's what I like. That's what I found. That's what I appreciate. Yeah.
So, how did grace shape what Gather Cincinnati looked like?
The first thing that comes to mind for me is the support of and connection of other people to gather. So in the very beginning, the first thing was that when I was telling pastors in the Cincinnati area, which meant the pastors that my pastor knew, so the OCA pastors, about it, they were all so supportive. They said, "This is something we need. I'm so glad you're doing this. We support you. Let us know how we can help." And the biggest thing was that they told young adults that went to their church that visited their church about Gather, and that's how Gather grew initially. And so the support of people in ministry in the area has been so unconditional and unexpected, deeper than I imagined. Right? I guess in the beginning I didn't know. I knew that's something I wanted, and I hoped other people wanted it. But to get such a positive, supportive reaction from pastors in the area and also from the synod, we have received so much support in organizing and making decisions and figuring out how to do kind of a very new type of ministry of young adults across such an area. And so that's been the biggest thing that stands out to me first. But then it's also the young adults themselves that connected with Gather and the way they showed up and continue to show up. And getting to see young adults for the time that they're in, living in Cincinnati. And they move here and then they move on to another city, or they move on to a different stage of life, or it's been really, really cool to see how people show up and how other young adults also need and value the space too. And I have a little line in the sign up form that's like, "What are you looking for in young adult faith community?" And every single person who's told me something in that line and their very first interaction with Gather, everything they've told me has been something I'm also looking for. And so getting to say, "Me too," like that is also something I care about. I care about being in community with other people of faith. I care about being in community with people who also want to socialize and get to know each other. And I cared about being in community with people who want to serve. And yeah, that's been a really cool experience. So many ways the Gather has been unexpected and a blessing for me and other young adults as well.
So some of the spiritual needs would be just the need for community, the need to be together. Are there other spiritual needs that you think are part of the community that gather together for Gather?
I mean, there's different, like I mentioned, service, right? So young adults want to do service. They have time and capacity to connect with each other, connect with their churches, connect with the world. So as much as we've been able to, we've given some opportunities for that together, which has been nice. Gather's a little bit of Gather Cincinnati, at least, it's a little bit of a small leadership team. So that's an area we'd love to grow in and be able to offer more opportunities for. But it's definitely a theme besides just, besides faith formation and fellowship. So those are kind of the areas that I think of our events and that are what we're able to offer in different events. We have some that are just fellowship, right? Just opportunities for somebody to invite a friend and hang out. I always kind of think of those and organize those as what would I want to do as a young adult, and do I think other people would want to do that also? So it's a huge variety of things, right? But we also focus on faith formation events. We have worship once a quarter. So we have only 4 worships a month or a year. And we do that so that we're not replacing somebody's primary worshiping community, but giving them a chance to have an additional worship experience. We also have a drop-in book club or a book club on a different book. Right now we're reading Pastrix by Nadia Bolz-Weber. And those are faith formation opportunities that are heavily discussion-based, and people get to read either a text. We just choose a chapter of some book to drop in and read, or get to go through a book together and reflect on what we're thinking together. So those are a little bit of the different ways that we provide those opportunities, the spiritual and communal service. But yeah.
So Pastor Nadia Bolz-Weber has connected with a lot of people. What is it about her speaking and writing style that really resonates?
Yeah, I think it connects back to what I mentioned earlier about naming the complex realities of the world. I think especially in a young adult phase of life where you're really wrestling maybe for the first time with some of those complex realities, having people who demonstrate really authentic, genuine language and naming and sitting with all of those realities is really helpful and really important. Glossing over or ignoring or, something like that it doesn't feel like a helpful or authentic response to the complexities of the world, to me. And I think that other young adults react similarly, getting to engage with those and to help it prompt reflection for us, and also an opportunity to share what we maybe already have been thinking about. So that's kind of what I've seen.
Sure. So the word authentic and authenticity comes up a lot. What does that look like?
Yeah, to me, when I think about that in community, it ties back to a lot of what I think about community ties back to Jacob's Porch, the rule of Jacob's Porch. And there's 10 rules. They explained it to me like it's the rule of Benedictine. It's how we do community together. And one of those is humility, vulnerability, dignity. We have humility in how we approach conversation, community. We're not always right. We approach with a humble attitude. Vulnerability, because relationship and community is more meaningful when you have space and time to go a little bit deeper and share a little bit of vulnerability. And there's trust in knowing that and trusting that people that you are sharing your vulnerability with will receive that. And dignity, we ascribe worth and value and dignity to others. And so for me, that's how I always articulate that kind of complex, having a deeper experience and having solid, authentic connection with others. So there's a whole, it's complex to develop a language for a new community. So what I haven't done is just take all of my favorite rules from Jacob's Porch and ascribe them to Gather Cincinnati, as much as I would love that. But sure. That's where that reflection comes from for me. So that's why things like vulnerability and authenticity, showing up fully as yourself and having a space where you can rest, where you don't have to be somebody or prove anything or demonstrate anything. You're already loved and valued. I think that's what church spaces can and should do for people, right? Is to give them that rest and show God's love to them, that they don't have to be anybody particular or expected or anything for God or for the people that they're in community with. So there's a lot of ways that it can feel challenging in the identities you hold as in many stages of life, but also in being a young adult and transitioning into that stage and seeing what all the experiences within it pan out to be. and having rest in that is helpful and gives you the space you need.
When grace allows room for that humility and vulnerability and dignity, doesn't it?
Yes, I think so.
I think sometimes that one of the challenges that Christians have is we want to always make ourselves the hero of every story and how we always get it right and how we have it figured out, and somehow that's supposed to inspire people. But I think that could put such a burden on people to try to live up to that same standard, and it's not spiritually helpful to people.
Yeah, I even see, that reminds me a little bit of my journey in leading Gather. I've learned so much by leading something new like this and leading as a lay leader in church much more formally than I ever have before, much more continuously, being responsible for growing and forming a group like this. There's a lot of ways that I've experienced new challenges and had new support and had new things to reflect on, and doing something that you enjoy, doing it from scratch, is totally different. There's a lot of questions to answer and a lot of grace to have for yourself to go slow and go step by step. It's a lot, but there's also a lot of knowing when and how to ask for help and connect with people who can help to lead and grow the thing you're building with you, and to delegate and give up parts of it, and to, like you said, not be the hero of the thing. And I think there's a lot of, it's easy to recognize all the other people that have been involved in Gather and supporting it, and the young adults to make it what it is. That's something from the beginning, not stealing the language from anywhere else, but I've always said about Gather that it is what you bring to it. It's fully going to be what you bring to it. And it has been what all the young adults who have been a part of it and still are, or were at different stages or in the beginning, have brought to it. But to continually reflect on how do you build it in a way that's sustainable and lets people bring what they can as formally as they'd like to, is challenging and important. So I think a lot about that. I've thought a lot about that over the last couple of years building it, but that also relates to the space of the Gather network. That's a challenging thing that we have to think about, maybe being a more formal lay leader for the first time. It's helpful to connect. It's also helpful to connect with other young adults who are going through that same experience.
Sure.
So, yeah.
I had a colleague on staff with me when I was in Pennsylvania, and she always said that she knew how to be the perfect mother until she had her first child. And then all of a sudden she was humbled. I think that leadership's the same way, where we know how to be the perfect leader until we try to lead, and then we realize, okay, yeah. And the longer we do that, the less we have trust in our abilities, that's for sure.
Yes.
So did Gather Cincinnati then become a model for beyond Cincinnati?
In part, yes. And initially, first, also, I mentioned Gather Cincinnati in passing was the second Gather. The first one is Gather Twin Cities. And so, in large part, Gather Twin Cities was a model for Gather Cincinnati. And it was an informal model because it was kind of a touch point at the beginning. I took a lot from their model that was very, very helpful. The cadence of worship, their logo, the name. And Gather Cincinnati started because Caitlin in Cincinnati heard about Gather Twin Cities. And when I was looking for a young adult group at an ELCA church locally, I asked her and two other people who had it listed on their website that they might have one at some point in time, if they had one. And somebody didn't respond. Somebody said, "Oops, sorry, our website's out of date." And she said, "We don't have one currently, but let's get coffee." And then she told me about Gather Twin Cities. And from that, I connected with Steph, the co-founder and organizer of Gather Twin Cities, who said, "Yes, you can borrow our name and we'll pay for your logo, and I believe in you." That was really helpful. And from there, after I went to the Churchwide Assembly and met other young adults who were thinking about or already doing Gather in their areas with the young adult staff at the LCA, said, they said, "We need to connect these people." And I said, "Yes, please. I would love to be in community with them and learn about it. Learn about how they're already organizing and how we can do that together, learn together. And so they created the idea of the Gather Network and asked Steph and I to be the first two co-chairs. And so I got to lead with Steph. And then I received a third co-chair who leads in Colorado Springs, Gather Pikes Peak. And yeah, it's been lovely. And we got to kind of templatize, share all the resources that we had used, everything I wish I knew about forming a Gather. And the young adult staff created a really great process where we could have paid mentors to walk somebody through their first few months of being a Gather and make sure that they have the connection support they need, and really wonderful opportunities, monthly gatherings where we could be together, and Steph and Sam and I would choose a different topic to have conversation on, or share some new resources or something that we had done. And it grew so much. And so now Sam is still the chair of the Gather Network. And this last Thursday, I went to the Gather Network meeting, and it was so big we had 2 breakout rooms. And it was really lovely. So that conversation and space and support and ability to connect with other leaders, and has been wonderful as we've built it even.
And it seems to me that the word community is more important than institution.
Yeah, I haven't talked about any institutions once, have I?
No, and that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's unique. It's a unique way of doing it. I think to supplement what already exists and to create stronger connections between young adults and back to their churches is really helpful. I think Gather and the church coexist really well in a young adult's life. There's young adults who are in Gather while they're at a church, and while they're between churches, and while they're finding a new church, or when they move to the area and they're looking for a church and they're church shopping, and to have that support and know other people and what values the church has and lives out. We have a lot of folks where it's really important to them to find an affirming church, and so being able to meet other queer identifying folks that Gather and be like, what church do you go to? Do you like it? Where else have you been? Things like that. That's been good. So,
you can almost find where the safe places are then, can't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. And every church does everything differently, and we're partner churches with many wonderful congregations, and as long as they're affirming and open to and support their young adults and all their adults, then we're partner churches with them. And we have a lot of ELCA partner churches, but we're also ecumenical in that we have a UMC partner church, and hopefully an Episcopal partner church. We have young adults who go to a variety of denominations as well, some connections to their churches. So it's more important to us that young adults have a space where they can be themselves and connect in community in the way that is meaningful to them. And we're glad that we're able to be a space like that for them to supplement. And also that there's so many other wonderful spaces that they can feel equipped and empowered to dive into community in.
I love that sense of ecumenical engagement as well. There's divisions, I think, are divisions of an age bygone now, and we get stuck on them. But it's, as you said, the core value is building community, not maintaining the institution.
Yes. Yeah, I'm excited to see where we go with connecting with ecumenical partners and what that looks like. There's a lot of possibilities. There's so much that I dream of for Gather Cincinnati, and it's beautiful.
So there was a discernment retreat?
Yes.
Tell me about
November.
Okay.
Yes.
So tell me about that.
Yeah, the young adult team at the LCA hosted it. And they're the folks that I've worked with for the Gather Network and that I met at the Church Wide Assembly. And I got to be a small group leader there, which was really lovely. And it was for young adults who identified some transition in their life and wanted to reflect on it together with other young adults. And you can imagine there's a multitude of transitions that young adults could be going through. And they gave some structure to think about some different categories of what could those look like in vocation, or relationally, or in your physical location, or in your identity. and time to reflect on them in small groups and large group worship. And I got to meet some people who I'd been working with and supporting and gotten to know through the Gather network, which was really lovely getting to meet them in person. And I think that also the biggest thing I took away was having a way to articulate the naming complex realities in the world. The young adult team at the LCA, the people that are involved in events like this and that I've gotten to know and do ministry and organizing with and being community with, are really good at that. That's a really amazing strength, blessing that they are able to bring to the work they do. And I really enjoyed getting to be a part of that experience. And there was there's a lot of complex realities in the world, and getting to reflect on them in the context of transitions and in worship together was helpful. To give one very specific example, they had a listening session about the ELCA. Just asked a room full of young adults, what do you like about the ELCA, and what do you not like about the ELCA? And, there was a lot of specific questions they asked, or I guess a few very open-ended and intentional questions they asked. It was really interesting to be able to have somebody give space for that.
So what
Really,
are the strengths of the ELCA when it comes to the young adults?
Oh, I think that spaces like this feel like, to me, one of the strengths, right? That the ELCA cares about it enough to let people completely focus on it and ask people to give people the free rein to build ministry and structure that supports young adult leaders to lead other young adults to build community. Gather is led by young adults for young adults. Gather Cincinnati and the other gathers that exist. That's part of receiving the Gather Network grant, is that your leadership team is over half young adults. So to give a team like Daniel Kirschbaum, the young adult leader at the LCA, the space to do the great work that they do and to connect and empower young adults and to listen to them and not have to jump through too many hoops and get to support them. Having the Gather Network grant available to give the initial funding for Gather ministries that are starting up. There's I got to review applications for the Gather Network grant and seeing the getting to say yes, you receive the funding that you have available to you. That go do great work, work with your Gather Network mentor and being community with other Gather Network leaders and have the support you need to start. Those are a few of the things that I've seen personally. And there's also so many different experiences, right? That's the thing that's top of mind for me because I have been living that, right? I am a leader. I've connected with other leaders. I got to be in community with the people, these leaders in person. But there's so many different experiences, right? My church is intergenerational, kind of evenly distributed across all the generations, and in person, like a medium size. But there's people who have all types of different home church experiences or previous church experiences, and I think it's a variety. You get a different answer every person you ask, for sure.
Sure. I love the sense of the ELCA, which is our church-wide national structure, that the permission giving and encouraging and allowing room for exploration is pretty amazing to hear.
Yes, I appreciate that too.
So you're in the field you're a data scientist.
Yes.
And when you were interviewed for the Living Lutheran, you drew a distinction between quantitative and qualitative measures. First of all, explain the difference between the two.
Sure. Quantitative measures are, you can think of as numbers, right? So how good is something on a scale of 1 to 5? That's a factual single number that quantifies something. And qualitative numbers or qualitative measures are you can think of more as a description. So if I said, what do you like about this thing? You might say, I can hold it in my hands and it's soft and I really like that. But that's not a single number or easy to aggregate. You have to do a little bit more to aggregate an answer like that. And so you can see how those are very different types of data to interact with and to understand patterns at a very large scale across.
Sure. Okay. And then you mentioned that you love being on the quantitative side of
Yes.
that. Yes.
Yes.
And
Specifically, those two types of metrics, those two types of measures can tell you a lot about somebody's interaction with something. And specifically, I think about in my work someone's interaction with technology in really any form. But if you think of a piece of software, a website, something like that. And technology is so pervasive in our lives that I care a lot about helping other people to have a positive experience with it as much as possible. And you can get a lot of detail by asking an individual person, what do you like about this thing and what's going well and what's not going well. But to see patterns at a really large scale and to say, for the majority of all users of this massive piece of technology, what's going well? What are they using it for? What are they doing with it? What does that look like? Tell us more about that. That you can see across that scale by using quantitative measures. So that's the thing that I think is really cool about data science, is that I can use statistics at a very large scale because of computer science and computer programming.
And in the interview then, and I love this, that you said that you feel called to love others by helping them have the best possible experience with the technology. That's
Yes.
cool.
Yes. When I was thinking about what I want to do as my vocation, I was really interested and curious about that specifically. And I really did feel like I could make an impact in people's lives, right? By having that impact at scale through data science, through these tools that I was already really naturally interested in. And so I also considered, there was a point in high school when I reflected and gave a little sermon on a mission trip, and a couple people said, have you considered seminary? I said, I think I'd be interesting to consider, but I also am really interested in these other things too. And, what does that look like right now for me? And I knew that some of the coolest pastors that I knew were second career pastors. And so I figured there was no pressure to make a decision, and I got to just lean into my curiosity and know that I could make an impact in a positive way with that. And that's why I do data science now.
Awesome. Yeah, I remember when I was talking with my bishop, thinking about going to seminary and asking, what should I major in college? And the response was something totally unrelated to the church, which I thought was like the best advice ever, because it just broadened my horizons and opened my mind to other things. So
Thanks.
And I love how you bring the intersection together of it's your work, but it's also a way to live out your faith.
It's been an experience in my life, seeing on a individual scale people's experience with technology, helping an older relative use a phone or navigate a new app or something like that. Anything you can do to make something an easier experience for them feels more empowering, right? They can do more on their own, and knowing the direction that technology has gone and probably will continue to go, it's only going to get a little bit more complex over time. And there's going to be more opportunities and more things people can do. And the more people that feel empowered, not just older adults, but young people, or people who are trying to try a new thing out, the more that they can do with it, and the more empowered they feel to use tools fully and to be able to discover them, or even really complex things, right? Making a very, very complex system a little bit more user-friendly unlocks a lot. So I think it's really interesting to think about all the possibilities in that. There are so many different systems and so many consumer systems and other things. But that's how it evolved for me.
Are there other things that you want to add that we haven't covered?
I think that if I was going to add one thing, I would add the call to action for people who are listening. But if you are, I imagine most listeners are probably already involved with some kind of church. If you have lots of young adults at your church, I'm very happy for you. That's very wonderful. If you're in an area that has a Gather, you can look at the Gather Network website, and I would encourage you to connect them with it. That'd be great. If you're in Cincinnati, I'd love to meet your young adults. If you don't have a lot of young adults, then noticing the young adults in your life and the ones that come to church or come to visit or tried church a little bit but can't come very frequently and haven't really become a core part of the community and are kind of looking for something different. Letting them know about Gather is a way that you can support them if there's one around you, or if your pastor or somebody else in your area is thinking about how you could support young adults. A new Gather in a new city is always a positive thing for the young adults in that area as well. So there's a lot of different ways to support young adults and help build that community. It feels important because I think without intentional organizing around it, it can be a little bit of a feeling of a missing generation at church, right? There's people who grew up in church and maybe they go to college and maybe they have a great campus ministry or not. And then they are young adults with busy lives and lots of opportunities and lots of fun things to do, and maybe not as many people around them that are going to church, and they maybe don't connect with traditional church community as much as when they're growing up or as much as the ones that are around them. And so they kind of don't go to church as much is one experience. And then maybe they have a family someday and they want their kids to have faith in their lives and they go back to church. But that middle time of when they were a young adult and they had new experiences and reflection and time and energy and we're learning and reflecting on new things and had all that going on in their lives was a really wonderful time to also connect with other people of faith in church community. So helping young adults to find spaces that are what they need, not forcing young adults to change for a space that isn't specifically what they're looking for, but supporting them and listening to them is really great. So there's a lot of different things that can look like I kind of exampled list out there, but if we can do that for young adults, as a young adult, that's something that I appreciate. I have great communities with me now, and I've been fortunate to help build them. But when I was in the beginning of it, if somebody had said, "What are you looking for? Let's talk about it together," and I know about this place that already exists, I would have thought that was very cool. So I think that's the call to action I would give to people who might be listening. And if you're a young adult yourself, there are cool church communities out there. Keep looking, connect with them. It's possible to organize and connect with other young adults, be in community together. Yeah.
Thank you for adding that sort of call to action at the end. I hesitated to ask the question because too many times, those of us who are older go to young adults and say, "Okay, tell us what we need to do to fix this and to get you in the church again." And I didn't want to put you on the spot. So on record, we should note that Elizabeth offered that of her own free will.
Yes. I was not told to prepare a call to action.
That's right.
Yes. I've also heard of stories of churches asking young adults what would be interesting and helpful to them and then not doing it and saying, "Oh, no, you don't," and kind of giving, dismissing the response. So when you ask your young adults that, really listen to them, right? And don't assume you already know the answer. Don't assume that, oh, young adults are all online, so we need to get on Facebook to connect on social media with them. That might not be the answer that they're going to give you, right? Probably won't be. But also, we need young adult music, but we don't really want to do that. That probably also isn't exactly what they're going to say. Just be open-minded, right? It's
sure.
Maybe it's the naming complex realities in the world. That's a much more nuanced that. If someone asked me, "What is young adult do you want in your churches?" That's what I would say, right? But that's harder to do than adding a different type of music or putting your church online more. Have your church online. Make sure the young adults can find it because that's how they find Gather for sure. But be ready for being in community with people who are thinking about a lot of new things and experiencing a lot of new things in their faith and their life, and are maybe open to sharing that with you because it's a really beautiful experience. I really love when I get to hear about other people's reflections and whatever stage of life they're in, and I really appreciate people who take the time to listen to and support me as well. So
awesome. Well, thank you for the ministry that you do and the way that you're changing people's lives by offering them community. And I love that notion of naming the complex realities in the world. That might appear in some of my writing down the line, but that's a great thing to
Yeah,
do. And thank you for taking time to join us for this recording as well. Appreciate that.
absolutely. Thank you for the really insightful, reflective questions. I really enjoyed getting to chat with you today.
This is Pastor Rebecca Great again, the media ambassador and storyteller for the Southern Ohio Synod. And I want to thank you one more time for joining us for this episode. During this conversation, lots of different ministries and ways to get connected were mentioned. So I wanted to make sure to highlight all of these in the outro so that you could check them out and get connected on your own. If you would like to learn more about what the ELCA is doing with ministries specifically for young adults, you can check them out online at www.elca.org/youngadults. ELCA Young Adults also has accounts on Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok, all with the same handle, at ELCA Young Adults. If you would like to learn more about the Gather Network, you can check out their website at www.gathernetwork.org. There, you can learn more about what these communities look like and where they are currently located, so you can get connected with them. If there's not one in your area, there is a place on that website where you can get the process started for beginning one in your area. Gather Cincinnati partners with First Lutheran Church in Cincinnati to host their website and their sign up. You can get connected with this specific community by visiting www.firstlutherancincy, spelled CINC.org/gathercincy, also spelled CINCY. Until the next time we gather on this podcast, remember that we are stronger and better together, joining Jesus in the restoration of the world.